A nuclear war cannot be won and must never be fought.
The president also calling on all nations to stand up to Putin and support Ukraine. But if Putin's finger is already on the button, how do we stop a potential nuclear apocalypse? Joining me now, Utah Republican Congressman and House Judiciary Committee member Chris Stewart. So, Congressman, welcome to the show. And obviously, these are very serious times and very serious threats. Do you think that our country is meeting the rhetoric appropriately? And if not, what else should be said?
Well, I actually think very strongly on something here. Look, I'm not a flower-toting pacifist. I'm a military guy. My Air Force officer, come from a family of officers. And I also believe that America has an extraordinary responsibility to defend freedom and democracy around the world when we can. But we also have to look at the last 20 years in Afghanistan and Iraq and Libya and other places. And the problem was we had an unending and open-ended commitment, and we never really defined what the success was. And that's my great fear here, is our president has committed us, but he's never said, this is what victory means. This is what winning this war means to America. And by the way, our definition, I think our perceived definition, that may be very, very different than Zelensky's right now. And I think if we're going to walk any further down this path, the president has to tell the American people, this is what we're trying to do in Ukraine. And if that means expelling every Russian soldier from Ukraine, including from the Donetsk region and Crimea, I promise you that means we're going to go to war with Russia. If, on the other hand, it means maybe going back to the pre-February lines, that's probably something we could negotiate. But that's not what Zelensky is thinking. He said his idea of winning this war is to expel every Russian. And there's got to be clarity on this. And there's a growing sentiment, I think, among those of us in Congress that we want to know what we're getting into. We don't want to be a 20-year commitment like we ended up in, like I said, in Afghanistan or in Iraq, and never knowing, what it is we're trying to achieve there.
But part of the problem is Congress has abdicated so much responsibility in terms of these wars and war powers and actual formal declarations. Now, yeah. I'm one of those people, I guess you would describe me as more of a pacifist. I tend to have a great deal of respect for people who wear the uniform and fight for freedom and put their needs and their lives above all else to keep this country free. Having said that, I don't trust this president to make decisions to put millions and millions of lives at risk here. And although Russia and Ukraine may have very different ideas of what victory looks like in their part of the world, inserting the United States into the middle of the entire thing seems like a fool's errand.
Well, and I don't think someone who has that view would be a pacifist at all. That's a reasonable series of questions to ask. And by the way, and I hate to come back to this because, we've just ridden this dead horse and beat it so badly. But how can you look at Afghanistan and not just President Biden, but General Milley, our Secretary of Defense, General Austin? How can you look at this team and say, yeah, I got confidence in them? After the debacle in Afghanistan, for which no one has been fired. No one has taken responsibility. In fact, they claim everything went swimmingly well. Well, if that's their definition of a victory of success, that should worry every one of us when we look at Ukraine and say, well, do they have the judgment? Do they have, I think, the experience that they've demonstrated that they can lead us through this very difficult situation? Because they've certainly lost my confidence, and I think they've lost the confidence of most Americans when it comes to these not just important, these actually critical national security issues.
Yes, I don't think it's beating a dead horse. I think it's actually very, very important to look at how a 20-year conflict ended and how disheartened so many people were who fought in places like Iraq and Afghanistan and questioned themselves whether their commitment was worth it. So, those are the people that I think about. But when you question that, I also think that Russia and China are looking at the United States, asking the exact same question for very different reasons. Congressman Stewart, thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.